So here we are in video 3 on our series on hardware synthesizers for worship. And we just want to get hands-on and say, okay, so we've ordered a synthesizer, we're ready to start using it for our church. What kind of presets can you expect? Like right out of the box, what are some general sounds that you're gonna expect from a system like this?
Okay, cool. On the system one, the pad that I tweaked in a separate video, like that came with it right from the get-go. I think it's like patch 8, like right at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So that's a great value. For the System 8, it's sort of different. You can just like use most of the patches that are on there. The thing is, there's so many wonderful patches out there for the System 8 that you would want to go and select like the specific ones you liked. Honestly, until recently, I'm not gonna lie, I had an Excel spreadsheet with the name of all the patches and my rating on the side, and like good, bad, medium, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Well, just recently, Roland put a system out there on the VSTs that you can put star ratings on the patches, and it remembers. So you can go and like just search for a pad now or whatever, and it'll pull up the top ones, and then there's other ones. But I'm gonna pretend like you don't have that system or you don't have that synthesizer or whatever. So here's the JX3P emotive pad from factory. It sounds pretty good. There's a couple things I'm noticing. One of them is there's so much bright, right?
Yeah.
It sounds great, but there's so much brightness and you're just like, ah. So, it's like a razor blade pad. So one of the things we can do immediately is go to our low pass filter right here. And playing around with it, you can sort of tell, okay, it must be here, right?
Yeah.
So like trying to figure out how much brightness it has. In fact, on this synthesizer specifically, all you have to do is hold down Shift and touch that knob and find out how much is on there. So say we got this, right? So a couple things is, first of all, there's too much release, and then there's also too much bright. So I'm gonna touch the Shift knob, and it tells, Shift button while I'm touching the high pass to see where it is on this one, or you can just like grab it manually. It's at about 153, which is well over half. So what I can do initially to tame it down is I can bring it to about middle. It does a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Now keep in mind, this one's velocity sensitive. There's like, in terms of like how loud and how much filter sweep it has, it's gonna respond to how hard I hit the keys, and that's something to keep in mind. We actually want that, right?
Yeah.
So for now, I'm not gonna touch those settings, but just keep in mind, that's why when I go like this, you only hear a little bit, but if I hit it harder, you hear more, right?
Yeah, depending on what's happening in the service, you might wanna creep in some chords, or it might be time to start popping.
And you want that, yeah. Yeah, you want your instrument to be responsive. You don't wanna have to keep reaching over.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, I noticed that like the brightness is being shaped by the LFO, and it's at a very low setting. So like, if you listen.
Yeah.
I don't want it to do too much of that in church. I want to have control over how much of that is going on. So I'm gonna hit Shift and filter, and it's got like a +31. I'm gonna drop it to only +4. So I'm not getting that sweep. Because sometimes if they're praying, you don't want a really active moving pad.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to pray, and then like you keep getting distracted by like how the pad is evolving and doing stuff.
Yeah.
And that's annoying.
Yeah.
So,
or your sound guy might be back there going, why is that so bright? And pulling your EQ.
And then it disappears and like, where'd it go?
Now it all sounds terrible.
Yeah. So we're gonna do that. I honestly, on the System 8, not every synthesizer has the same parameters, but for the System 8, it seems like a sweet spot is ±4 on those knobs. So another thing I noticed is there's a lot of pitch mod. You can hear it a little bit, but you'll hear it a lot more if someone else is playing that doesn't switch pitch. So I'm gonna bring that down to only +4 instead of +53. Look at the amp and let's see how the amp is doing. Okay, there's no amp on that one. So, how is my pad sound right now? Not too bad.
Yeah.
But it still takes too long to stop at the end.
Yeah, it's got a bit of a sweep in.
So then I'm gonna change that. And on this one, The JX3P only had one filter operating in this patch, and so like if you could see over here, like this one's like the lights are off. What I want is to this is sort of complex to explain, but basically the filter section already has the ADSR set up on it, right? I don't want to change that because it will change the character of the pad.
Okay.
But I also want to change the parameters of the amp, which is what's actually being affected. And so what I'm going to do is go into the menu on this one, because again, not all synths have this issue. Master tune, patch edit, and VCA mode is going to be environment 2. So basically, I'm going to take the amplifier, the amp section was using the filter section ADSR, and I'm going to move that over to its own on amp, so like that section just lights up on this synth, right? Done with that. I'm going to save real quick because I want to save my progress. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up an amp filter section that makes sense for church. So probably maybe like two notches above for amp or attack. So like it's going to come in primarily like quickly. Delay is going to be really high. Sustain is really high, and then release will be midpoint. Not bad,
It's
right?
a lot more responsive.
When I let go, there's still a lot of that though. So maybe something else is happening. So I'll look at my effects. Modulation is 250 and 255. I wonder if that's part of it. All right, so what I'm going to do is try to take the time down on the modulation. Let's see how it sounds. Still a little bit too long. Maybe I'm going to look at my delay and chorus. Yeah, that might be part of it. So delay plus chorus, I'm going to change that to just chorus. There you go. See? No more delay.
Nice.
So now it's not going to take too long to resolve, and I have my patch. Save. But then on the System 8, I have a little hand controller over here. So maybe I want that to like affect my filter. And what that means is like I can actually do my little fade-ins and outs using that. So let's try it. Yeah, see, there we go. I can go both ways with it. There you go. Done. So like while I'm playing, I don't have to sit there and be like, like reaching all the time. I can just be right here, right?
Yeah.
So now it's prayer time, right? Now it's the intro. Now it's like the fast section, right?
Yeah.
I know it's a stereotype, but
No, I mean, it works.
Yeah.
I had a guitar amp that had a presence knob, and
Yeah.
it's just that mid filter sweep.
Yeah.
How forward do you want it to be in the mix?
Yeah. So that's like a generic example of how I would like modify a patch. I'm basically looking at, it's almost like a, I hate to say it, but it's almost like a metaphor for like the Christian life. God sees past our imperfections to, who we are, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we can see past the imperfections of the patch to what the patch sounds like and listen to, okay, I like the sound, but I don't like some of the things it's doing, and we can adjust those.
Yeah. Because the Lord can see all the parameters that are affecting it.
Yeah.
You are really bad about delaying. Down.
Yeah. Although I will say that this is like, I'm sure that there's going to be at least 50 different comments from pastors like, that's not how it works. And you're right. It's not how the Christian life works, but.
Yeah. I mean, the metaphor I was thinking of was almost like baking a cake. There's 100 different spices that you can use. If you know, you can taste something and be like, there's too much of this. Yeah. And the more you play with it, the more you get to know what it could possibly be and start pulling those things out or adding things in when you want more.
Yeah, and then part of this is knowing that like I already saved all the stuff that I have on both of these before I left my home. So knowing that I can go and restore this stuff, I can play around with it all I want in church, and when I get home, I can save what I've done out into my like computer or DAW or onto this SD card, or I can just like scrap it and go back to whatever I was.
Yeah.
In fact, I did that recently because I was like tweaking my patches too much and they all sounded the same. And I started doing one of those things where, like, you know what? I'm just going to use the patch that came with it for the most part, unless I know it's something that obviously no one's going to like in worship, like really bad, stuff. I'm just going to use it in worship, and my music director can tell me when he thinks there's too much brights,
Yeah.
Like allowing it to have character and breathe without modifying it too much, So
Yeah.
it's just a balance. Because when I first got my synthesizers, I was like, oh, I'm going to make my own pads, right? Well, I my own thinking of how pads worked made like the most generic sounding stuff. It was horrible. Like it was like the first youth lock-in I did with like this little one. Like it didn't work very well at all. So yeah.
We've all been there in ministry. I'm so glad that the people I serve now didn't see me back then when I knew nothing, because I would not have this job.
But briefly, that's a metaphor of like your congregation. I tell this to people when like they're like, well, I don't sing very well, so I'm not going to sing in church, right? I'm not going to. And I'm like, well, don't be afraid to worship God, even if you can't hold a tune in a bucket, because ironically enough, the things that make pads sound great and other things in synth are imperfections and not perfections.
Yes.
If I was to just roll up like a very generic, perfect patch, right? It's going to sound like garbage, I'll tell you that right now. So let's see if I can do it. That's off, that's this. Manual. So like if everything's off, where's that coming from? That's what a perfect sound would sound like. It's boring.
Yeah.
Right? So why would we do that? Let's do some things that like throw imperfections in there, right? To like simulate like what would it be like in terms of like everything's set up. Watch me embarrass myself.
No, you're fine.
So the imperfections I introduced are some wiggle, like in and out of phase on the saw oscillators. There's pitch, filter, and amp modifications that are being done. Lots of reverb.
Yeah.
It sounds better than just plain.
Yeah. It's, I mean, like even with when T-Pain made auto-tune famous, the point wasn't that he was perfectly on pitch. You were hearing the imperfections of the pitch being moved. Like that's what makes that auto-tune effect what it is. You're hearing the imperfections more than what's actually quote unquote perfect behind it. And that makes all those sounds. I mean, I'm listening to you tweak those sounds and hearing each thing sweeping in and out and just finding that right level. And that's awesome, man.
But yeah, so that's the beautiful thing about like telling your congregation, like, sing in church, Don't be afraid to lift your voice even if you can't carry a tune in a bucket, because ultimately it's the combined sound of all of us together, that sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got one more video, and it's going to be a short one, but we just want to wrap up this series talking a little bit about external controllers and how you can expand a hardware synth setup with that. So stay tuned for one final video in this series.
Oh my gosh, my foot hurts. All right, so what I'm going to do now, is it all right if we did this video in the sense of me putting the pad system out in front of you and showing you how to do it as if you were playing guitar in a set? Would you be willing to like try it like a tutorial like that?
Yeah, I can try.
I don't think I'm gonna be in stomping mood, so.
No, you're fine, yeah.
And we can try that. All right, I'm gonna grab the cable.
Go put this stuff away real fast.